Okay, so here we're going to evaluate concentrations, and basically we're be diluting concentrations. So the act of diluting a solution by adding water to reduce the concentration. Right, so here's just a summary example. A solution with a concentration of 0.5% means there are 0.5 parts of medicine for every 100 parts of the solution. Dilution is an important concept for anybody interested in biological sciences. In general, if we add 100 milliliters of saline water to the solution, to 100 milliliters of a 0.5 sedative solution, you will have 0.5 milliliters to 200 milliliters, which would be a 0.25 solution. So as I was saying, if this was the original solution, 0.5 over 100, if I add 100 to it, 100 milliliters here, with the same amount of medicine, then I would get 0.25 over 100, which is a 0.25% solution. So we're going to learn how to dilute a solution is really what we're doing here. So we're going to read this problem, then we're going to do these here. So it says your veterinarian is administering a sedative to your 40-pound dog, Bella. The sedative is mixed in saline solution. Unfortunately, the solution is pre-mixed at 2.5% for a horse, and it needs to be 0.5% concentration to be administered at 10 milliliters per pound for your dog. How much saline water needs to be added to the current solution to reduce the concentration of 0.5% and have the correct dosage for Bella? So this is right in your book, be page 165. If you want to follow along that way. Of course, you also have the answer key, but you kind of want to go through these. So we'll start with number 1. Put the given information for the original solution by filling in the numbers of milliliters associated with 100 milliliters of the original solution. So here is the original solution. Right here, original solution. Milliliters, that's the saline. It's 2.5%. So how many milliliters is that going to be? It's just 2.5. Makes sense? This is the sedative in milliliters. This is the original solution. This is the new solution that we need for our dog. Right? So let's go to number 2. So number 2 says we want to put the given information for the new solution by filling in the number of milliliters associated with 100 milliliters of the new solution. So the new solution, we want it to be 0.5%, not 2.5%. So really the only thing we want here is what the new solution is going to have in terms of the sedative, which is 0.5 milliliters, or 0.5 milliliters. Make that a little bigger. So now number 3 says put in the number of milliliters to be administered per pound of Bella's weight. So here's the dog, 1 pound. We know from reading the thing, it said clearly that we need 10 milliliters per pound. Make that a little bigger. So let's just review what we have so far. It's pretty simple. The original solution has 2.5 milliliters of the 100 milliliters. That's the sedative That's the saline solution. The new solution, which we just typed in from above, we need 0.5 milliliters of the sedative for 100 milliliters of the new solution. And then we just did 3, which is just taking it right from above that of the solution. After we get the new solution, we're going to put in 10 milliliters per pound. That's how much the dog's going to get. So number 4, which is right here, it says determine how many milliliters the dog will need. Well, if he gets 10 milliliters of the new solution for every pound, then he's certainly going to need 40 times that, which would be 400 milliliters. Hopefully that one was easy, right? So for number 5, it says next determine how much sedative will be in the amount from number 4. So here's number 4. It needs 400 milliliters, right? The solution 0.5 milliliters per 0.5 milliliters of sedative for every 100 milliliters of solution. So if you need 400 milliliters of the solution, that's 4 times this. So this is going to be 4 times 0.5, which will be 2. So number 6, which is here, we got to determine how many milliliters of the original solution. So here's the original solution, 2.5 milliliters of the sedative, 100 milliliters of this saline, or actually solution there, the water, whatever. Medicine, water. So you can see that if I'm going to start pouring these 100 milliliters into, so I get 2 of these, it's basically, it's going to be a little less than 100, because if I used all 100, I'd get 2.5 milliliters. I only want 2. So hit pause now and think about this, and I'll put up how to do it. So there's our proportion to solve for this. Again, the only thing we're doing is we have 100 milliliters of the original solution. It's got 2.5 milliliters of sedative. So if we pour it in a bottle, we're going to pour in enough so that we get 2 milliliters of the sedative. We don't want 2.5. So, but we want to know how much of the solution we need to pour in. So if you cross multiply and divide, you're going to get 80 milliliters. So that's going to go right here. So our last question, it says, finally determine how much saline water needs to be added to the current solution to reduce the concentration to 0.5% and have the correct dosage for Bella. We're actually done. The answer is 320 milliliters. Now, how did I get that? Well, if the dog needs 2 milliliters of sedative and you want to put 400 milliliters into the dog, if you add 320 milliliters to the 80, you would get 400 milliliters, which is how many you want. And you also want to get 2 milliliters of the sedative into the dog. So if you add 320 to that, you'll get 400, and in those 400 milliliters will have 2 milliliters of the sedative. Well, let me show you another way of doing it. And this will work for all solutions. Okay, so we know we have 2 milliliters of the sedative and 80 milliliters of in the saline. So there's a ratio of 2 sedative 80, okay? So I'm going to put that down. So I'm going to start here with my 2 milliliters of the sedative and 80 milliliters of the original solution. Now what I want is a 0.5% solution. So I want 0.5 milliliters of the sedative for every 100 here. So let me put that down. Okay, so I have that down. Now clearly these things don't equal each other. I gotta add saline solution here in order to make it equal this. If I keep adding to this denominator, I will eventually make it equal this. So watch how I'm going to do this. So I got 2 milliliters of the sedative, 80 milliliters of the solution. I'm going to add more to the solution. I'm going to add enough so that it equals this ratio. So these two ratios will be the same. So how would you do that? Well, if you guess cross multiply and divide, you'd be right. So there's the first cross multiplication. Now be careful, you have to use the distributive property. So you might want to try this on your own, and I'm going to work it out and put it down. And so there it is worked out. And I'll leave it there. You can hit pause and see if you can figure out what I did, which is really just pretty simple. I just cross multiplied and divided. But notice I got the same answer as just reasoning through it after I had that table